No mistake.
I was wondering, looking at your facial hair, did they ever ask you to trim it before the fight? Because there's a rule about it in some places, as you know.
Yeah, is there? They can always ask me to do it. Doesn't mean I'm gonna cut it. Well, you know, I mean, what kind of day and age are we coming to when a man can't even grow a beard without being asked to cut it? You know. What do these guys think? I mean, I take care of it. You know, I don't. It's not all ratty and nasty. It's well groomed and finished.
A little bit jealous that you can't compete on a card on Saturday that's going to have 25,000 plus fans.
Yeah, you know, I think the biggest arena I fought in was the O2 Arena in London, and I think that was something like 17 or maybe 20 or something like that. But it's when I walked into that arena, the ground was shaking. It was a different monster. Before that, I had fought in the Palms. It was my second fight in the UFC when I fought at the O2 Arena. And the Palms, you know, fits I think like 4,000 people or something. So it was completely different. My feet were shaking. I feel the vibrations on the concrete when I was walking out, and it's just intense. You know, it's a great feeling. But that's why we do this. You know, if that intimidates you, you need to go sit in the stands. You know, that's the shit that motivates us there.
What fights are you looking forward to seeing on Saturday?
Definitely the light heavyweight fights, Gustafsson and Rumble, and then Phil Davis and Bader. Both of those guys, I trained with them. I became friends with them at Alliance when I was training there. So I was really excited when both of them were fighting on the card. I'm actually a little jealous that I'm not fighting on there with them. You know, Phil and I always talked about fighting on the same card. And it hasn't happened yet, but you know, still have long careers ahead of us.
Who do you think will win the main event, and can either of them go on and beat Jon Jones?
Yeah, I think Gus is gonna take it. He's he's a world-class athlete, and he showed that in his last fight or in his fight against Jones. You know, I think Gustafsson poses a lot of threats to Jones, and look at the last fight. Look at how close it was. You know, I think there's always a possibility. Jones is a bad man. He's, you know, pound for pound in the world, and you know, it's just who brings their A game that night.
So, what was your reaction to Jon Jones' recent cocaine positive test?
That's a tough one. You know, as an athlete, you hate to see that. You know, the guy works hard. He's in the gym, works hard, dedicates himself to the sport. You know, got caught doing something he wasn't supposed to do. You know, knowing Jon Jones for as long as I did, I didn't think that was a part of it. You know, I didn't think that was a part of him. So, you know, maybe it's a one-off deal with him and stuff. I don't know him. Obviously, I don't know him that close. You know, that close. I know more of a training partner and in the gym and stuff like that. And that's what I can attest to is there's a reason he's pound for pound number one. He works hard and he deserves it, and he's a badass.
Do you think he might come out of this whole ordeal stronger?
With the champion's heart, there's no doubt in my mind that he'll come out stronger with this. You know, he's a young guy. It's funny, you know, compared to me, he's, I think, 7 years younger than me or something like that. So, but I never really looked at him like that because, like I said, our relationship was in the gym, and he's a monster in the gym. So I look up to him as an athlete, you know. So I think he'll come out stronger.
What's your take on Crow Cup and possibly Lesnar returning to the heavyweight division?
Yeah, you know, it's a tough one. You know, I mean, Crow Cup, those guys deserve the respect of being in the UFC. If they want to be here, there's no other organization that they should be fighting in. They don't need to go Bellator. They don't need to go anywhere else. They should be in the UFC. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, kind of spinning your wheels a little bit by coming back to the UFC going off the run that both of you guys came out of in the UFC in the first place, you know. Did they make the adjustments to be competitive at this level again? it says something that the heavyweight division is a little stagnant right now. It says that there's a lot of tough competitors out there going after it. Anybody, look at Stipe against Junior. That was a tough fight, man. That was a very close fight. A couple adjustments, and Stipe could have taken that fight. So, them coming back, do I think it'll be good for the heavyweight division? I'm not sure if it'll mix it up as much as people think it might.
If Brock does come back, again, it's all speculation for the time being. Is there a fight you'd like this year, perhaps?
Yeah, definitely get my name out there to even more fans, and he's a tough athlete. I take a lot of pride in fighting the guys that I do fight, and I respect them as athletes in the cage and in the octagon. And it's definitely going against a guy like that would be a pleasure.
Are there any athletes outside of the sport of MMA from other sports that you look up to for motivation and inspiration at all?
Yeah, The Rock, Dwayne Johnson. He's not only from just seeing what he did in the WWE and stuff like that, but as a Polynesian man and in the Polynesian culture, being from Hawaii and all that, it's definitely something to look up to. I got a chance to speak with him briefly, just corresponding back and forth, and just where that guy's mindset is amazing. His, the way he looks at himself and as his brand and how the level that he holds himself to is amazing.
Speaking of heavyweights, the next title fight will be Cain Velasquez against Fabricio Werdum. Obviously, you're very familiar with Werdum. What are your thoughts on that fight, and who do you see coming out on top?
I think Cain's going to get that fight. There's I don't ask for much. I'm a guy that likes to earn what he gets, and that's one fight that I am asking for again is Werdum. I feel like I have a score to settle. I feel like I showed up a little late to that fight. You know what I mean? And it just passed me by, and he beat me up for the better part of the 5 rounds. So, it's one of those things where it is what it is. He beat me fair and square. He pretty much kicked my ass for the 5 rounds. So, but it's definitely something I want back, and I will rally for that fight. If Cain gets hurt or something like that, you better believe I'll be the one to jump in the day before.
Do you think the adjustments you've made since then, obviously gone into working down in Glendale with Edmund Treverdian, that you'll be better equipped to deal with Fabricio Werdum? Yeah, definitely. The skill set that I'm learning under Edmund definitely gives me the tools to go out there and beat a guy like Werdum and anybody. We're not just training for one guy. We're not just training for my loss against Werdum. We're training to be the champion and be a dominant champ. So everything that I'm learning now is based along the big picture. And even during my fight with Schaub, there's always a big picture in mind. If you can, imagine there's a certain skill set that I want to get to, a certain level I want to get to. But along the way, throughout these different fights, you need to work on certain things. And going out there and instead of just, doing what I'd normally do and throw big punches at Schaub and take him out like I normally would, you see me in that fight not throwing a punch for almost two minutes. I didn't even hit him yet, and when I did hit him, I knocked him down. You know what I mean? So we were working on stuff where there's certain planning to go into, and everybody in my mind at this point is a stepping stone to get to that title. So you got down at Jackson's, you're saying that things were more one-dimensional possibly, and with Edmund, you're opening up more, facets of your game.
I wouldn't say it's one-dimensional at Jackson's at all. It's just different, a different style of coaching it with Edmund. Coach Edmund is, he really has structure. He instills that confidence through hard work and belief in each other. Not only his belief in me as an athlete, but my belief in him as a coach, and knowing that when he gives me instruction, that it's the correct thing. I'll sit there and watch other people spar, and we'll be talking back and forth. He'll say, "Oh, this guy's setting this, and this up." What do you know? 30 seconds later, he throws that same combination that Coach was just talking about. So it showed me he is able to pick up on certain things, on body language, on how they're setting stuff up, certain strikes, and to have that in your corner I mean, it's priceless. You know, for him to be able to bark out direction and what to do, what he feels like the other guy's going to do. I mean, like I said, it is priceless, and have that in your corner, have that sense of confidence and direction in your corner.
The UFC made a big announcement recently by signing ex-WWE wrestler CM Punk. What was your initial reaction when you heard that news?
Great. You know, I believe anybody that wants to prove himself, come on in. You know, doors open.
You obviously train MMA full time. He's going to give himself 6 months, but whoever he fights would have been someone like yourself who's been training MMA full time. Do you think it might be a little bit of a wake up call for him when he does enter the octagon?
I can't say that because before my first pro fight, which wasn't in the UFC, I had only been training for 6 months. Before I signed with the UFC, I had been a professional fighter for a year, had 9 fights, and jumped in there and started fighting some of the best, you know. I like to think that people are limitless. The only ceiling that you have is the ones that you put on yourself. You know, you surround yourself by the people around you. Your own mindset dictates how far you'll go. You know, do you expect so little out of yourself that, you know, thinking, oh, he can't make an impact in 6 months? I think hopefully he can. You know I can. I did. Came in the UFC and started making impact right away.
So, Travis, you touched on your fight with Brendan Schaub. It was obviously a great performance, by the way. Schaub later on would guest Joe Rogan's podcast, where Rogan was brutally honest.
That was a tough one.
Could you just, what were your thoughts on what Rogan said about Schaub? Because he seemed to be genuinely worried about his health.
Yeah, I think, you know, after listening to that, I spoke with my best friend who, if there's anybody in the world to have a conversation with me like that, if that were to take place, it would be him. My best friend, his name's Josh Bunyan, and you know, he pulled me aside. He's like, you know what, man, I would probably, if that happened to you, the way that you handled him, if you got handled like that, you know, I might be having the same conversation with you. And I'm like, yeah, I agree. The tough part about it is in front of millions of people. Maybe not televised, but on his podcast, and it went viral. You know, that's something where you just got your ass whooped, and then on top of that, somebody's pouring some salt in the wound. You know, not behind closed doors, but publicly. You know what I mean? Because it would be hard for my best friend, for Josh to tell me that, to talk to me like that in closed doors. I would probably want to punch him in the face too. But this was on a podcast. This was public, and that's just something tough to hear in general, not let alone being public. You know.
Do you think that was inappropriate of Joe Rogan to do so?
That's their relationship. If I go to Joe Rogan and I talk to him right after a loss like that, I better be ready to hear the brutal truth. So I think he set himself up. Whether you know, there's things saying that he invited him or he didn't invite him and this and that and whatever. If I'm going on the radio with somebody like Joe Rogan, I don't know Joe like Brendan knows Joe, but I know what I'd be getting myself into. So I would, based off of that, I would either say yes or no. And I probably wouldn't. If I was in his shoes, I wouldn't have gone on there. I'd been like, no, not today. Maybe another time. But I'm not going to open myself up to that, you know.
What did you make of the quote coming from the UFC last week comparing Conor McGregor, saying he's the Irish Muhammad Ali?
Yeah, man, I don't think they're far off with that. You know, the kid is he's good for the sport. I love watching him. The things that he says, the way he has his way with words, and he comes out and he puts on performances like that, you cannot deny him. You cannot deny the kid. And so, you know, I don't only call him a kid because he's younger than me, but I don't mean to demean him at all. You know, he's a man. He's out there doing what he does and stuff like that. But I have a lot of respect for the guy. You know, he's definitely made a believer out of me. Not through what he said and through his words, but through his performances.
What do you think about his chances against Jose Aldo?
I think they're good. I mean, look at how do do you not believe in the kid and the guy? You know, he comes out and he dominates. He doesn't just barely squeak by with some decisions. You know, he gets mad at himself because instead of knocking him out within 2 minutes, he knocked him out within 2 rounds. You know, it's like, you got to give it to him, man. He comes out and, you know, his last, you know, Jose Aldo, his last performances have gotten the decision, if I'm not correct, but it's going to be fireworks.
Taking your record, for example, when you have only 2 losses, maybe important losses for you, because when you're trying to build something important to be on top, and just 2 losses makes you go down, and you have to build it up again. So, would you agree that MMA might be the most cruel sports from all the sports in the world?
Yeah, it is a barren desert out there. You know, you have one little slip up, and you're at the back of the bus. You know, you are waiting in line, and just you're lost at that point. You don't know where your career's going to go. You have one more tough fight, and then all of a sudden be on the chopping block. You know, it's a cruel sport. It's a cruel world out there, but that's what has to motivate you. You know, that's what you have to go out there, and you have to perform. You have to train. You have to dedicate yourself to this. This isn't a part-time sport, even though people say, you know, oh, I've had ignorant people come up to me and say, oh, you only work 2 nights a year. So, are you talking about? You come with me and spend 1 week in my world, and you will quit. Before that week's up, people will quit. You will quit. I will make sure you quit, because you don't know what these fighters go through, and some of these guys do. Some of them are idiots, and they do treat it as part-time jobs. But if you're dedicated to the sport and doing what you're supposed to do, it's an obsession. I work harder than anybody in this room. That's how I look at myself. I dedicate myself. This is my life. Besides being a father, I'm a fighter. And there's nothing else that takes its place. You know, I have a very short time in this career, and so it's going to take the obsession that I have for it to really get involved in the sport. So, you know, while other people are sitting there and they get a clock out from their job and go home and have a nice dinner with their wives and children, I'm sitting there having dinner thinking about getting punched in the face by whoever it could be, you know, thinking about how put myself in positions and how I'd fight out of them. You know, I'm sitting up at night wide awake until 3:30 in the morning going through all the different scenarios. And this is when I don't even have a fight booked yet, so I don't even have a face to the opponent. You know, this is just stuff that I go through on a daily basis, and there's no ability to check out. Once you check out, then you should retire.
And I think you, as far as I remember, you had a pretty late start in martial arts, and now just few years later, you're on top of the division in elite league like UFC. Are you amazed by this? Are you surprised that it happened so fast? Maybe.
No, like I said, I'm a hard worker. That's one thing that MMA has taught me. That's one thing that the UFC has taught me. I was a lazy Hawaiian back in the days. I mean, talk about heavyweights being lazy. I was it. When there was lazy, a picture of lazy in the dictionary, you saw me waking up at 10 when I should have woken up at 6.
You're just doing 110%
yeah,
everything you do.
Exactly. So when I was lazy, I was 110% lazy, you know. But now it's, you know, and I've said this before, where you really do see a boy grow into a man in my UFC career, where I was, you know, starting camps at 275 pounds to now I'm walking around at 245, you know, so you just see a difference. You know, you take it serious and you treat this as a full-time job, and, you know, and more, an obsession, it gets scary.
Travis, you know, sitting down your next opponent with Edmonds, you said that, you know, how do you assess who you're going to take on next? Because obviously Werdum was a big setback. What's the thought process into, you know, accepting your next fight and who it's against, because it's obviously a little bit in limbo what direction you want to go at the moment?
Yeah, it's trying to find somebody willing to fight me. That's the process right now. Is you know, I know I have a big target on my back, and I know I'm ranked 3rd. I know there's other guys that want to be ranked where I am, and they can have the spot as soon as I'm done with it. I'm on my way to being the champ. So, once we find a suitable opponent, we'll go out there and get after it. I'm not turning anybody away. I'm not saying no to any fights. I'm ready to go. Ranked, unranked, champ, not champ, newcomer making his debut. Come on, you have a rude awakening to UFC.
Last weekend, the AFC and NFC Championship games took place, so the Super Bowl set. It's the Patriots versus the Seahawks, and obviously your boss Dana White is a massive Patriots fan. Who are you picking in the Super Bowl this year?
I'm a fan more of athletes than I am teams, and just to be able to see what Tom Brady's done throughout his career has been something special. As a team, though, it goes to say something about the Seahawks. They won it last year, and they're on track to win it again this year. So, as a fan, I like to see somebody like a Tom Brady come out and perform and do what he does best and take home, the championship. But at the same time, you have a nice little story there with Seattle. Hopefully, possibly win it 2 years in a row.
So, Travis, obviously you're a very proud Hawaiian. I was in Oahu last year. I loved it. Can't wait to go back. We've seen so many Hawaiians have a lot of success in MMA and in the UFC. When I also got yourself, got fighters like Yancy Medeiros doing very well. What is it about sort of Hawaiian culture or Hawaiian fighters that produces such good UFC material?
It's because we're thick-headed. That's why we freaking just go out and throw down. It's like that's I want to say this without people taking it wrong, but the Hawaiian culture is a very proud culture, and we're a warrior culture, and I still feel like we're a culture that is maybe a little bit less refined in the sense that for us it was and it kind of still is the strongest warrior is the king. So that's kind of our spirit, that's our culture, that's where we come from. So you go out there and you're constantly measuring your manhood against one another, and this sport is perfect for that. Okay. I mean, we have women in the room, so I'll use a different term, but you get where I'm going with it.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.